All right, so maybe I could do this now. Funniest thing, I was getting ready to do a live video and I got a phone call. All right, so I had intentions of initially being on camera. I did. I initially had intentions of being on camera. And I had also intentions of, I knew that I was going to be doing a video today. I really did. I'm going to, instead of my being on camera, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let you look at my notes and try to decipher my notes. But, so, yeah, I'm going to start here. I'm going to start here with my notes. So this morning, I knew that I was going to be doing a video. I thought I was going to be on camera, but yeah, God's word say that many are the plans of man, but it is his will that's going to come to pass. So yeah, with this here, I think that I just need to let you see my notes and see this stuff here. And this that I have notes on really is nothing that I had planned on discussing, which is kind of funny too. Initially, for the past couple of days, I have been sitting in Revelation chapter 16. And with an excitement, like I had been sharing some portions of it, but when I got over to dealing with, because Revelation chapter 16 has to do with these bowls, right? It's 7 bowls total. 7 bowls total. And in Revelation chapter 16, the first 7 verses covers the first 3 bowls. And for the past couple of days, I have been sitting with bowl number 3, and it has been so amazing. And I wanted to wait. So I really was supposed to do this video yesterday, but I kind of wanted to wait and let it kind of sink in and make sure, like, is this really what I'm saying? Like, this is so amazing. And the thing about it is, with the book of Revelation, I have always loved the book of Revelation. Like, it's one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's one of my favorite books of the Bible. And so in the past, reading over that book, like, I'm going to be honest, in the past, like, when you read about, for me, reading about these bowls of wrath, I would have seen like the anger and the wrath and, but when I tell you that what I have been looking at the past couple of days, even though these bowls, the outpouring of this bowl, like for instance, these are the last judgments, the outpouring of these bowls, the 7 of them. And by the time you get to the 7th, the pouring out of the 7th bowl, the scripture says that the wrath of God will have been completed. So, like, when we hear of wrath, and we hear anger and judgment, but let me tell you, with the first 3 bowls and the outpouring of the first 3 bowls, what I saw as I dug deeper into that, and that's like in these other notes here, what I saw was God's love for us, not anger, but love. And it blew me away. And that's why I was like, wait a minute, like, let me kind of dig into this and make sure. And so I knew yesterday, like, this here, my notes are crude. Like, if you my notes were really crude. Like, even like, y'all, I just can't wait to talk to you about what I saw, especially with that 3rd bowl. The first bowl was the pouring out over the land. The second bowl was the pouring out over the sea. And to understand what the sea is, oh my, and then the 3rd bowl was the pouring out of the rivers and the springs of water. And that's what I wanted to share with you, right? So I got down here reviewing Revelation chapter 16, verse 1 through 7. But even before that, I wrote Kislev, because this is the month of Kislev. This is the Hebraic month, the 9th month of the Hebraic calendar, the month of Kislev. And this month, like, I already know that I'm going to do this again next year, like literally go through these months and really get it into me, because this month, like what I wrote about or read about with Kislev, the month of Kislev, what I studied, it's about leveling up, and leveling up in the area of trusting God and resting in God. Now today is the 3rd of Kislev until 6 p.m. Then it becomes the 4th. So this is something that I know that I'm going to be paying attention to. I have today the 3rd, so it's 30 days in this month, which means I have 27 more days, 27 days of leveling up in my area of trusting God and resting in God, and also learning new battle strategies, which had to do with the tribe of Benjamin. So this is about learning more battle strategies. And so I'm excited, and I really want to pay attention to that too. But this is what thought I was going to be talking to you all about. And so with what I learned thus far in my digging into those first 3 bowls, immediately my first thought was, because I realized that, hold up, even though with the outpouring of these bowls, it talked about, like, for instance, with the first bowl, the pouring out on the land, there was swords that was going to come on the people. And then with the second bowl, the pouring out on the sea, and how the sea was going to turn to blood. And then the third bowl, and how it was going to turn to blood, the outpouring on the rivers and the springs, and how it's going to turn to blood. Like, what we are conditioned to think is negative. But when I saw God's love, when I began to understand what the rivers are and what the springs are, I was like all excited and getting ready to come to y'all early this morning. And I was taking my notes because I was going to go through and I was going to review it, and everything changed right here. Everything changed right here with the key. So the first thing that I wrote down, because the first thing that I was going to share is that Revelation, John, when he wrote it, one of the first things he said was, blessed is the one who reads the words of the prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take it to heart, what's written in it, because the time is near. It didn't say that we needed to be afraid. It said blessed, right? And that is what I literally found. Now, I haven't gotten to bowl 4 through 7 yet, and I think it's going to be a minute before, you know what, I get there as the Lord leads me. And so if the Lord tells me today, I get there today. But I kind of want to sit in what I am looking at in Revelation chapter 16, or what I have discovered thus far about these rivers and these the springs of water, and what it really means for it to be turned to blood. Like, this is crazy, right? So as I wrote that, the first thing I write down was, begin at my sanctuary. That's the key. The key, and really the key to understanding the first 2 bowls. The first 3 bowls. The key to understanding the first 3 bowls is that God says, begin at my sanctuary. And he said that in Ezekiel. And so that's what I have here, right? This is Ezekiel chapter 8, but it was right here where he said it. Right there, begin at my sanctuary, Ezekiel chapter 9, right? So I found myself, again, I was supposed to be going over, reviewing my notes and putting it together so I can, forgive me if I'm holding the camera, and so it's a bit shaky because I was pulling my sleeve up, on my arm. So anyway, I'm going over this and begin at my sanctuary, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait a minute. I need to really look at this. Even though I was trying to rush to get back to my notes, God totally turned me from reviewing Revelation chapter 16, verse 1 through 7, and he sat me in Ezekiel chapter 8 and chapter 9. And what I saw when I looked at chapter 9 about this mark, now, a lot of times we know about the mark, right? But the only thing that we hear about the mark is we hear the warning in Revelation about the mark of the beast, right? We hear about that mark. But do we even, or are we even reminded that Satan is a copycat? Like, he copies God. He's a copycat. And there was another mark. Even before this mark of the beast, there was another mark. And so, and that's what you see here in Ezekiel chapter 9, right? And so let me go over this real quick. Probably I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm definitely going to share it because this is actually what made me come and do this video, because I figured, in my notes, as my notes got away from me and took me all the way into Ezekiel, I figured, well, I'd do my video that I had planned on doing on Revelation chapter 16, verse 1 through 7. I'll just do it tomorrow. It was no big deal to me. I'll do it tomorrow. And yet when I looked at this, I'm like, I need to share this. I need to share this now. And so when I started looking at this, because again, God said, he said, begin at my sanctuary. At my sanctuary. That's where you begin. The judgment starts. The judgments start with the house of God first. God said, begin at my sanctuary. It starts with the house of God. You've heard the saying, clean around your own front door first. Sweep around your own front door. I think I'm saying it right. Sweep around your own front door first. Or how Jesus said it, pull a rafter out your own eye before you try to take a splinter out of somebody else's eye. Well, that's what God does. He begins at his sanctuary first. So I go back, I've studied this before, and this is like one of my favorite verses. I kind of identify with this verse because of this one guy that came along with these 6 who had a sword, and he was clothed in linen with where is it? Right here, with a writing kit at his side. It says, and the Lord called to the man clothed in linen who had a writing kit at his side and said, go through the city of Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is the place of worship. Today we call it the church. Jerusalem is the place of worship. It's a place where God had put his name. It says, and put a mark on the forehead of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. Those who are grieving over the stuff that is happening in the church that should not be happening, they had a mark put on them by this man who was clothed in linen with a writing kit at his side. Again, I identify with him because I'm always writing. I'm always writing. But they would have a mark put on him, and following behind him, like before him, there was 6. What it is right here. Here. Then I heard him call in a loud voice, bring the guards of the city here, each with a weapon in his hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate. So here's my notes on that. The upper gate was also called the old gate, the east gate, or the middle gate. I don't know if any of you who are doing your personal studies have gotten to the place of studying these gates just yet. But the significance of the locations of the gates and who was where, like all of that is significant. So you know what? Let me do this. Let me put a marker here and let me show you something real quick just for your personal studies. Oh, you know what? I got it right here. I got it down here. So the temple, Jerusalem, it had directions, and I've been learning the cardinal directions also. So this down here is east, this is west, this is south, this is north. And so the east, that upper gate, that in chapter 9 that these men came from, these 6 men came from this area here, which is where the tribes of Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun was. And I have Judah underlined because Judah represents the government, right? Judah represents the government. Listen, we need to pay attention to this stuff because God is telling us. So there are 6 men, six now, who is coming from the direction of the upper gate. The upper gate was on, it says, which faces north. The upper gate is also called the old gate, the east gate, or the middle gate. So this is this area here, and they're going to this area over here. So the north gate, listen, I'm looking at this and I found myself going back to Ezekiel chapter 8. And the reason that I went back to Ezekiel chapter 8 was because Ezekiel was shown something which required this to happen. Oh, but let me go back and tell you what happens. So these men, the man clothed in linen, he had to go through first, and he had to mark in the forehead those who were grieving and lamenting over the detestable things that are being done in Jerusalem or done in the place of worship. The things that we are seeing that are happening in the church that should not be happening. Those who are actually grieving, because there's some people that see the stuff and they don't think nothing of it. Like, whatever, they might gossip about it, they might laugh about it, and that'd be about it. But there are some who are actually grieving over these things. And so a mark is being placed on their foreheads. So then it says, this is Ezekiel writing. He says, as I listened, he said to the others, which was the 6, he said, follow him through the city and kill. Follow him through the city and kill without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter old men, young men, maidens, women, and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. And they began with the elders who were in front of the temple. That stood out to me, which was what kind of paused me and made me go back and totally my study for today. And my purpose, again, many are the plans of man, but it is the will of God that's going to come to pass. So this totally derailed me from where I thought I was going to go and put me on a new course. Especially when it says slaughter old men, young men, maidens, women, and children. And I mention that because with everything that's going on over there in Israel right now and with the Palestinians, and I kind of was feeling a certain way. I'm not going to lie. I was feeling a certain way. Who wants to see people being killed? I was feeling a certain way, especially I would see the videos of these children, who are shaking and they're crying and they're afraid. And I was feeling a certain way. And then after about a couple of days of feeling a certain way, and I guess I must have been in my heart talking to God about all of that. And then I was reminded of these different wars that I read of in the Bible where this had to happen. And again, notice what it said. Follow him through the city and kill without showing pity or compassion. And so I'm looking at, so I kind of just stepped back and I started looking, and I'm like, wait a minute, what am I looking at? What is happening? We're literally seeing God's word come to pass. They didn't have people to give us the show by show like we're getting it now, because they didn't have internet back then in the day, but it was written and we've read these things many of times. But anyway, I'm looking at that, and next thing I know, I'm taken all the way back to chapter 8. What started this? What happened? What caused chapter 9 to become a necessity? And that's chapter 8, and that's these crazy notes I have here. And so in chapter 8, y'all, I really feel the need to share this with you. In chapter 8, Ezekiel was minding his business, y'all. He said, I was sitting in my house on the 6th, it says in the 6th month, that's the month of Elul, And when I realized that, and that's what made me realize that, like what I wrote here about Kislev, that I need to pay attention, like really pay attention to each of these months. Elul, the 6th month. What I think I remember about the month of Elul was that it was said that the king was in the field. So he's like easily approachable, because he's in the field, and you could go up to him with whatever your request is. And the reason he was in the field, because a preparation was being made for the next month, which was Tishrei, which is like one of the high holy months, days, like the celebration of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So I realized then that, okay, I need to really pay attention to these months and understand what the significance of the month is. And so, because God's word is like literally telling us this stuff. So it says that this is when it was the 6th month, which is the month of Elul, on the 5th day. It says while he was sitting in his house. So in his house, he's minding his business. He's minding his business, and he got company. It says the elders of Judah were sitting before me. So I had to go look that up. And so the elders, they were like the rulers over the flock. That would be considered, it would be like having a bunch of pastors in your house with you. The elders of Judah, the elders, with plural now, the elders of Judah. I think in Hebrew it's called Kohanim. I'm still trying to remember those words, Kohanim. But the elders of Judah, or the pastors, and this is what I had looked up and wrote about them, that they were not apostles. Apostles had a special authority, but the authority of the elders was the word of God. So these were pastors who were responsible for teaching the ministry of the church. They were sitting in the house with Judah, like whatever they had going on. And while they were sitting there, Ezekiel, they were sitting in the house of Ezekiel. And for whatever was going on, for whatever reason they had gathered, while they were there, Ezekiel has an experience where all of a sudden, here comes, it says, the hand of the sovereign Lord came upon me there, and I looked and I saw a figure. A figure. It was like that of a man, but it wasn't a man. He saw a figure. From the waist down, this figure was fire. But from the waist up, it was glowing metal. So I'm looking, I'm like, okay, glowing metal. What is this? Iron glows when it's heated up. Tungsten, I don't know what that is. I probably had to go look it up. You know, it wasn't in me to go look it up, so I didn't, because I knew what iron is. And so iron, when it's heated to extreme temperatures, it glows. And I began to think about it. And I'm like, when we get mad, when we get angry about something, we be like, I'm hot. I am hot. I'm angry. I'm on 10. I'm on fire. I'm angry, right? And so I realized that what Ezekiel saw was the anger of the Lord. He saw a figure like that of a man from the waist down. This figure is on fire. But from the waist up, he was glowing. He was like glowing metal. This is metal that glows when it's heated to extreme temperatures, which means that if it's red, it's 740 degrees to 900 degrees. If it's yellow, it's 950 degrees. But check this out. At very high temps, a temperature above 950 degrees, it turns white. Therefore, when you say that you on 10, you white hot. So I realized, like, this is the first time, as much as I've read these verses, as much as I've read over this is the first time that I realized that I was looking at anger, pure anger. It says, the spirit of Ezekiel was heated to the extreme. He was so angry, and like I would always reading over chapter 8, I would be so tickled, like, because I would read the part, but I didn't know at that point that I was tickled. I didn't know that I was looking at anger. at the anger of God. I was tickled because this figure, that was on 10, that was pure anger, he took, it says he stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the hair of my head. He, like, I still laugh about that on my. He took Ezekiel by his hair. He grabbed him by the hair and took him from where he was, sitting in his house, minding his business in front of the elders. He took him to Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the place of worship. Jerusalem, the church. Jerusalem, the place where people went to offer up their sacrifices, where animals was slaughtered and like different type of offerings was done, burnt offerings, Thanksgiving offerings, sin offerings, like different type of offerings were done. Jerusalem, the place that now held God's name, because the first place that held God's name was called Shiloh, and God left them. Like, he had enough of them, like, and he left. So the new place where God allowed his name to be was Jerusalem. We call it the church today. He takes Ezekiel in between earth and heaven, and in visions of God, he took him to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate. That stands out to me. Hold on, you can see it right there, north gate. That stood out to me. Like, I'm like, and I kept, and so I had already read this, so I started looking through. I'm like, okay, did he go to the north gate, and then did he go to the south gate, and then did he go to the east gate, and then did he go to the west gate? Because there were 4 different things that he saw, right? 4 different things, and I marked them off. But each of these different things was on the side of the north gate, positioned around the north gate. As far as the encampment of the Israelites was the tribe of Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. The reason that I have Dan underlined was because he was the head, just like of the north. He was the one that like was set out first. He was the head of the east gate. Judah took the lead. Of the south gate, Reuben took the lead, and back here of the west gate, Ephraim took the lead. We know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west too. I just wanted to mention that. That has nothing to do with anything, but I just felt the need to mention that. But Dan over here now, one thing that's significant about Dan is when you read in Revelation chapter 7 and it talks about the sealing of these tribes, Dan, the tribe of Dan, is not mentioned, along with the tribe of Ephraim. These 2 tribes are no longer mentioned. Now, you see them mentioned in everything, but in Revelation, they're not mentioned. One of the reasons I learned, it took me a minute to figure this one out, but one of the things that I learned was Dan was not mentioned because initially because of the idol worship, the gross idol worship that they had fallen into before Ezekiel. I think I first read about the issue with Dan in the book of Judges, I think, and I'm not in a position right now to speak on that because I had to go back and read that. Ephraim got in trouble too. Like, he got in trouble. Ephraim, I kind of feel like, and I have to study this more to kind of prove it, but I kind of feel like Ephraim had a issue with everybody else. Like, Ephraim is the nephew of all of these. Ephraim and Manasseh are the children of Joseph, who Israel or Jacob took as his own. And he told, before he died, he told Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, them 2, those are mine. Every other child that you have is yours. So we don't even hear, we know that Joseph had other children, but we don't know anything about these other children. We only know about Ephraim and Manasseh. So Ephraim, I feel like Ephraim had an issue. It was some things that I was reading. I don't even remember where I was reading it at, but Ephraim literally had an issue with his brothers, and I think that he felt anger with his uncles with all the rest of them, I think this is something that was passed down because of what had happened with their dad and what the brothers did to their dad. Like you could just see it. I had to dig into that a little bit more too. But yeah, Ephraim is not mentioned in Revelation chapter 7, which is significant, and neither is Dan. But here now I'm understanding, like as I look at this with Dan, the north gate, there was a judgment that happened here. And so throughout all of these in chapter 8, it kept mentioning the north gate, and that kind of stood out to me because we're in the month of November, and in this month of November, like yesterday, I heard something that initially went over my head. But I'm reminded of it now. And what I heard, I don't know, like I don't know if it was a reel, a video, a YouTube, something that I might have read. Like I don't know. I just know I heard it yesterday, and I know it was a guy that was speaking. So I'm kind of thinking it might have been a video or something. But what I heard was the guy said that, and it had to do with Christmas, and he said that, it's not that, he said that people are talking about Christmas now. He said that we know that Thanksgiving is coming up, but we're talking about Christmas now because of the joy. And he said that we just want the joy to last a little bit longer. That's what I remember him saying. And I kind of heard it in passing, and I just didn't think anything of it. But it comes back to mind now because as I go over this in Ezekiel chapter 8, and it's talking about the north gate, like in all of these areas, there's 4 gates that's on the north side. I found out there's 4 gates. There's what's called the Yekaniah gate, or another word for that is the spark gate. And that's the gate that I think the king entered into, like whoever was ruling, they entered into that gate. And then there was a gate that was called the offering gate, and that was the gate that what was that offering gate? Let's see, I got it in my notes over here. The offering gate was, okay, it said it was the highest level of, let's see, I have it, offering. I had them not in order. It says the highest level of, I can't read my writing. I can't read my mind. It has something to do with the offerings. I guess that was being brought in. So because of the the offerings that people do. And then there was the women's gate that the women would go through, and then there was what was called the song gate that the temple musicians would go through. So it was 4 gates that was located on this north side. But what kept standing out to me was the north gate. And then, like, as I was looking at that, and I heard or remembered what this guy said, then I started remembering. It was almost as if I was just getting all these different memories. And I remember how growing up around the time of Christmas, there would be like the cartoons, and there'll be the Frosty the Snowman cartoon, and there'll be the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon, and you'll see a lot about Santa Claus. But what I start realizing is that you don't hear a lot about Santa Claus today. I don't know why. Maybe that's just me not paying attention to it. I don't know. But I kind of feel like I haven't heard a lot about that. Or maybe it's just because I'm older, and like, my kids are grown, and, maybe that's it. I don't know. But normally, like when you hear about Santa Claus, you hear about the North Pole, and the poles, like the stuff that I had learned, like I even wrote it here about the Asherah poles, because here, remember, I had mentioned that what I figured out about this one that came and grabbed Ezekiel by the head, by the hair, is that he was on 10 angry. He was angry. He was hot. He was white hot. He was on 10. His from his waist down, he was fire, but from the waist up, he was glowing metal. Where is it right there? Where is it? Right here. Bright as glowing metal. He was on 10. Now that I understand, okay, this is anger that I'm looking at. So he's carrying him by the hair of his head. Okay, I'm gonna try not to giggle on that. Okay, I failed. So he carried him by the hair of his head, and he takes him to Jerusalem. And he's showing him, the first thing he takes him is to the entrance of the north gate. And like I said, the first thing I'm thinking of is, okay, the North Pole. And when I go to look at all these gates for this one particular chapter, everything was centered on the north side. And again, that reminded me of the North Pole. And so what I wrote is, I wrote in green as I started taking my notes up here, is it doesn't get past me that the focus is on the north gate, and that we're talking about what provokes the Lord to jealousy. That's what it says here. It says, I hope y'all can read my writing. I've underlined this so much. I've gone on it so much, but it says, the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and in visions of God, he took me to Jerusalem. That's the place of worship. We call it church today. It says, to the entrance to the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes to jealousy stood. And several times in this one chapter, you will see this anger, which helped me to understand who Ezekiel was looking at. This was anger, like I was on 10. It says, there before me was the glory of the Lord, of the God of Israel, as in the vision I had seen in the plain. Then he said to me, son of man, look toward the north. The entire time the focus was to the north. And again, I'm thinking about, okay, this is November, Thanksgiving is coming up. But that guy that I heard yesterday, I don't know. I know it was on social media, but I don't know like where. And he said, it's not that we're not thinking about Thanksgiving, which is coming up next. It's just we're excited and we want Christmas to last a little longer, because of the joy. And so I'm thinking, okay, Christmas, North Pole. And so he has him look at the north. He says, so I looked to the entrance of the north of the gate of the altar, and I saw this idol of jealousy. And he said to me, son of man, do you see what they are doing? The utter detestable things the house of Israel is doing here. The house of Israel, this is as a whole, this is the people of God. The people of God. He says, do you see the utterly detestable things they're doing here? Things that would drive me far from my sanctuary. That is something that's significant. It says, but you will see things that are even more detestable. And so that he's saying, he showed us the first thing in the north, at the north gate, or one of these gates, which actually I found out because I started digging. Y'all, I started digging because this is the month of Kids Live, and it's the month where I level up in my area of trusting God and resting in God, and I'm learning more battle strategies, so I'm learning to dig even deeper, and I realized that this is the Yekaniah gate, the Yekaniah, or the gate of spark. And it makes sense because this was where you see that first spark of anger. You see the jealousy of the Lord. So he says that we'll be looking at things even more detestable. So he takes us to another entrance, or it says he brought me to the entrance of the court, and I looked and saw a hole in the wall. A hole in the wall, or a breach in the wall, is very dangerous. It is very dangerous. A breach or a hole in the wall is dangerous because that's where you're vulnerable at. It says, he says to the son of man, now dig into the wall. So I dug into the wall and I saw a doorway there. And he said to me, go Go in and see the wicked and detestable things that they're doing here. So he went in, Ezekiel goes in and he looks and he sees portrayed all over the walls all kinds of drawings, it says, oh no, all kind of crawling things and detestable animals and all the idols of the house of Israel. So I remember back when, I don't think it was this year, I think it was last year, I ended up looking at this verse even closer. And it was something about it, like it made me feel like I was looking at the internet, because we call our pages on the internet, we call it walls, right? I'm going to go post on my wall, or would like somebody try to tell us about the stuff we post and we like, well, this is my page, my wall, you go post on your wall or however. And so I felt like that's what I was looking at. So he sees portrayed all over the walls all kinds of crawling things and detestable animals. And he says, and all the idols of the house of Israel, in front of them stood 70 elders. That stood out to me because, with my study of the Hebrew alphabet, I've learned that the number 70 is the gematria of the letter ayin. And that letter ayin represents seers. And so seers are like prophetic. And so these 70 elders, and the elders are prophets, right? So did I say the elders are prophets? I meant to say the elders are pastors. And so he says in front of them stood 70 elders, so it's 70, that's significant, or these are like seers of the house of Israel. Then I'm not going to try those names, not right now. It says standing among them was this one who had a censer, or each one had a censer in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising. He said to me, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness? Each one at the shrine of his own idol. So again, I'm like feeling like I'm looking at the internet, like people on the internet, people who are looking into this internet, the whether you're looking through your phone or you're looking through the computer, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And, there are a lot of people, I'm not going to call no names, but there's some people who have, I'm not going to call no names because it's not about that, but it's some people who have spoken of the battles that they've had with pornography. And they've been looking at pornography on the internet. And here God takes Ezekiel and has him dig into a wall. And when he goes in, once he digs into this wall and then he goes in to this door, he's literally looking at people who don't know that they're being looked at. He's looking at these leaders because these were elders. These were 70 elders. 70. The fact that it was 70 is like prophetic or seers, but they were in the darkness. It says, look at what they're doing in the darkness. In other words, they in their homes, they don't realize that they're being watched. And I think I did a post on that yesterday. They had nothing to do with any of this because I wasn't even looking at any of this yesterday. And I remember typing, I think it was yesterday or maybe it was the day before. I said that what's crazy to me is how people think that can't nobody see them, like because they're in their house and their four walls, they think that they are hidden, that nobody knows what's going on, and they forget that God sees everything. God took Ezekiel from his house all the way to Jerusalem, had him move back walls and go through doors and showed him what the people is doing, had him literally looking at it, and they didn't even know they were being watched. Like, that trips me out. It says, each at the shrine of his own idol. They say the Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land. Again, he said, you're going to see them doing things that are even more detestable. And this was the second thing. This was at the offering gate. So the next gate is the women's gate, because there's 4 gates on the north side of the temple. And so at the women's gate, you have these women Here again, it says, then he brought me to the entrance to the north gate. And again, that north is standing out to me. And at the north gate, there's these women, and they're sitting and they're mourning over Tammuz. Now, Tammuz is a Babylonian false god. Tammuz is a Babylonian false god. So the fact that these women are mourning over Tammuz, that lets me know that this happened after that Babylonian captivity has happened. So, like, there's a lot of things the Israelites have picked up and passed down, a whole lot of stuff that has been incorrect. Although Moses warned them, when you go into these lands, get rid of all this stuff. Do not worship and celebrate these things that these other nations are doing. And so when those who came out of Egypt, we know that they ended up dying in the wilderness, but their children went into the promised land. But the stuff that they saw coming out of Egypt or in Egypt, all these different false practices, they had to deal with that indoctrination. And then when they were captured by these different nations like Babylon, when they were captured by Babylon, there was some indoctrination that went on there. And so now you have these Israelite women, these women, because no other nation was going to go to Jerusalem to do any offerings or anything. No other nation was going to do that. So these are Israelites, and the women are sitting mourning for Tammuz. Tammuz was considered to be a vegetarian god. He was supposed to be the husband of Ishtar, who is also known as Ashtoreth or Asherah. So it was something about trees. Let's see what this says now here. It says the idol that provokes to jealousy, perhaps a replacement of the image of the goddess Asherah, originally set up by King Manasseh. Okay, so I went and read through that also, and that tripped me out too. King Manasseh, he was a young king. His mom, I don't know, because he was like a teenager when he became king. Now, his dad was Hezekiah, and his dad was a king who had tore down a lot of the idols, but Manasseh put them back up again. And it was a really big issue. And so his son, who is his son? Josiah tore him down. You need to go and read that. Second Kings chapter 21, verse 7. Do I have any? Oh, I do have notes on it. So King Messiah, it says, was evil. He rebuilt the high places. The high places are places of worship destroyed by his father. He erected altars. Now, altars are places of sacrifice. That's where we bring our gifts. Now, all this is just really standing out to me, especially when we're looking at things that are happening in the north of the temple. So these were places of sacrifice to Baal. He also made Asherah poles. It says he also bowed down to all the starry hosts and worshiped them. And that sort of started making me think about how people put stars on top of these trees. And all of these are things it's just little stuff that keeps coming up. Again, it's tripping me out as I'm reading this. And I know that the closer that the Lord gets, the Lord is really going to reveal a whole bunch of stuff. He's going to reveal it. But here in Ezekiel chapter 8, what you're seeing here is God is saying, first of all, this stuff is making me jealous. It's inciting me to jealousy, and it's getting worse. It just went from worse to worse to worse. He said, you're going to see more. He's calling it detestable. He's doing that, not me. I'm just reading it. So it says, they worship the starry host. It said, what I wrote is, the direction of this that provokes the Lord to jealousy is north. Manasseh erects an Asherah pole. Santa is supposed to live in the North Pole. in the North Pole. Manasseh did much evil in the eyes of the Lord, provoking him to anger. Then I had a side note, which was Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 21. And the notes on Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 21 said, do not plant any tree dedicated to Asherah. Like, this is tripping me out. The stuff is here. If I could find it, anybody can find it. And I read from lots of different Bible translations, but this one here that I'm looking at right now, it's okay. You can you can bear. Don't talk about my Bible. It's the Ryrie Study Bible. Let's see. Oh, I got some empty pages right there. Hold on. Like, my Bible is falling apart, y'all. So it's the Ryrie Study Bible, and it says, International Version. I have other translations in the back room. I kind of like have a Bible in different rooms, so wherever I'm going and sitting at that time, that's what I'm looking at. But again, this is tripping me out. So I wrote that down because it said don't plant any tree dedicated to Asherah, but Asherah is a Canaanite goddess. So that was the gods of the land that they were living in, the promised land that they had went into. They were supposed to get rid of all the Canaanites, but what they did was they began to pick up the different worship practices of the Canaanites and incorporate that in what they were doing. And then, like, when God brought Babylon against them, Tammuz here, they done picked that up and added that to it. And then what I wrote, offering sacrifices is the bringing of gifts. And that's what I had wrote up here about how he erected these altars, the places of sacrifice. And I got to thinking about it. Again, when we offer our sacrifice, we're bringing our gifts to the Lord. This is my offering. This is my gift. So stuff is just like, it's piecing together for me. So let's see. At the entrance to the north gate stands an idol that provokes to jealousy. Things that would cause God to leave his sanctuary. That's what he said. Things that will drive me far from my sanctuary. So we go down here, and that was the women's gate. And then there's another gate, which is called a song gate. And this was the gate where all of your musicians would go in. That was something that David had instituted with the musicians. So there was a gate that the priests and the musicians was going in. I noticed it was 25 here. It says, then he brought me into the inner court to the house of the Lord. There at the entrance of the temple, between the portico and the altar, were about 25 men. I did not bother to look up to see what the 25, like what that number represent, or however. I just wasn't even thinking about it by this time. It says, with their backs to the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east, they were worshiping or bowing down to the sun in the east. So their backs was now to from where they were positioned. Let me show you again. We have, let me show you here. Hold on, let me show you this picture. Pictures help me a lot. Okay, so here's the temple. This is the north side of the temple, and there are 4 gates along this north side. There are 4 gates. It's not shown here on here. This is from when they were in the wilderness. But there are 4 gates along the temple. I wonder if you could see it over. Well, that's too small, so we're just going to stick right here. It's a bigger picture. So there are 4 gates. So here's the temple back here. So the gate that was closer to the east, it would have been down here in this area, was the song gate. And there were 25 men who they were facing east, which means that they had their backs to the temple. Have you ever had a child turn their back to you while you talking to them? Ooh wee. The anger that a parent will have when I'm talking to you, child. How dare you turn your back to me? Turn around and face me. Look at me when I'm talking. What, ain't that what you heard growing up? Look at me when I'm talking to you. It said these men. It said See, their faces toward the east. Wait a minute, look slow. It says, with their backs toward the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east, they were bowing down to the sun in the east. You know God had to be angry. Well, we already know he was angry because what the image, or the, what it say, the figure that Ezekiel saw from the waist down was fire, and from the waist up was glowing, a glowing metal, which was iron on 10. He was on 10. He was on 10. He said to me, have you seen this, son of man? Is it a trivial matter for the house of Judah to do detestable things they are doing here? God is calling it detestable. And he's saying that it's not a small thing, but yet here today we live in a time where it's small, or I'm going to say it how I feel it's being said, not how I've heard it's being said, but how I feel, because I don't want to go try to dig to go and find comments that were actually made. But, live and let live. You do you and I do me, again, sweep around your own front door. Today, people ain't trying to hear it. They want to do what they want to do, but is it a trivial matter? We're saying that we're worshiping God. Think about Abel and Cain. God does not accept every sacrifice. He clearly rejected Cain. He rejected Cain's offering. We totally rejected him. And so he's saying to us, have you seen what they're doing? Is it a trivial matter? No, this is not a small thing. It says, must they also fill the land with violence and continually provoke me to anger? God is saying he's on 10. He's beyond 10. He's beyond 10. Okay? He's beyond 10. It says, look at them putting the branch to their nose. Okay, now. Look at them putting a branch to their nose. I ain't even going to touch that. Not right yet. Therefore, I would deal with them in anger. I would not look upon them with pity or spare them. Although they shout in my ears, I would not listen to them. Although they shout in my ears, all these praises, all these prayers, all these scriptures, all these what sound good sayings, although they shout in my ears, he said, I will not listen to them. He said, I deal with them in anger. He's not playing with us. And so the very next thing that you see is these 6 men. God calls for the guards. He says, Ezekiel wrote, he says, then I heard him call out in a loud voice, bring the guards of the city here, the guards, each with a weapon in his hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the east. Wait, let me correct that. Coming from the direction of the upper gate. I said east because I went to go look it up. And I found out that the upper gate is also called the old gate or the east gate or the middle gate. But it just made total sense to me because here in the east, that's Judah. That's Judah. And Judah represents government and it represents kingship, right? And so I realized that what I'm reading here in Ezekiel is the exact same thing that we're reading, or I was reading and studying in Revelation. I'm literally looking at what I've been finding as I've been going over these different books, because God is just leading me to all these different books. And what I'm finding is that they go in, there's different levels of looking at it. So okay, so I like taking pictures. So I take a picture, but if I really want to look at something, I zoom in. But if I want to get a bigger picture, I zoom out. So with each of these books, you're zooming in and zooming out. And so this one I feel would be a zoomed in version of what John wrote, a zoomed in version, because now we're looking directly at what is angering God. And it starts at his house. It starts at Jerusalem. So anyway, he has them come from the direction of the upper gate, which is Judah's or government. It says, and which faces north. So he's dealing with them first. It says, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. With them was a man clothed in linen. So along with these 6 was a man who was not dressed like them. He's clothed in linen, and he has a writing kit at his side. So he's a writer, which is why I identify with him. And I started with him first because I'm a writer. I'm into like studying and writing and stuff. It says, and they came and stood beside the bronze altar. And it says, now the glory of the Lord of Israel went up from above the cherubim where it had been and moved to the threshold of the temple. Then the Lord called to the man clothed in linen, not to the 6, but to the man clothed in linen who had a writing kit at his side. And he said to him, go throughout the city of Jerusalem. That's the place of worship. That's the place of worship, or the church. Put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over the detestable things that are done in it. This is a mark that is put on those who are not happy about the stuff that is happening in the church. Period. We're not talking about the world. A lot of times, the church has a lot to say about the world, but God is dealing with his house first. His house. He has a mark put on those who are grieving and lamenting over the detestable things that are being done in Jerusalem, the place of worship, the place that holds God's name, which is why I call it the church. It says, as I listen, because Ezekiel like quiet, but he's looking at all this and he's listening to all this. He said to the others, now he's talking to the 6. He says, follow him through the city and kill, without showing pity or compassion. That to me is harsh, but who am I to question anything? When God says something, it is. It is so. And he done already showed us in chapter 8 everything that made him angry. So now he's saying, because he's angry, like he's jealous. First of all, when you jealous, baby, if you ain't never been jealous, you don't ever want to be there. Ever. I think there's a scripture that says jealousy is cruel. So this is cruel. But he says, follow him through the city and kill, without showing pity or compassion. So we've been having, some of us have been having pity and compassion over what we see happening over across seas over there with the Israelites, and we're having pity, and I know I have been feeling I've been feeling sad for these little kids, like you see these little kids crying and just totally shook, like little ones. Some of these little kids look like my grandbabies. I've been feeling a type of way, but here I'm reading, God says he's starting at his house. He says, kill without showing pity or compassion, slaughter old men, young men and maidens, women and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark. What is that mark? It's not the mark of the beast that you read about in Revelation. I'm not about to call a chapter because, like I said, I wasn't even prepared to do this video. I didn't even know I was going to do this. I was expecting to talk about Revelation chapter 16 and what I learned, the amazing stuff I learned about them bowls, the first 3 bowls. But I couldn't help but to come at this. This mark. He said, don't touch the ones who have the mark. That's this mark. The ones who is not having it about all this detestable stuff that is happening with the church that should not be happening. That should not be happening. The stuff that's going on in the church that should not be done. These are the ones that have a mark. But look, pay attention, because not everybody had the mark. God had them start in his house first. Follow through the city and kill without showing pity or compassion, slaughter the old men, young men, maidens, women, and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders, pastors, who were in front of the temple. Those are the ones that got killed first. the pastors, the elders who were in front of the temple. Then he said to them, defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go. So they went out and began killing throughout the city. We talk in Jerusalem. While they were killing, I was left alone. I fell face down, crying out, sovereign Lord, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel in this outpouring of your wrath? Where? Not on the world. Not on the world. Not on the world. Not on the people who don't know God and people who are clearly lawless. Not on them, but on Jerusalem. On the house of God. On the place that holds God's name. He answered me, the sin of the house of Israel and Judah are exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed, and the city is full of injustice. They say the Lord has forsaken the land, the Lord does not see. So I would not look on them with pity or spare them, but I will bring down on their own heads what they have done. Then the man in linen, with the writing kit at his side brought back word saying, I have done as you commanded. Wow. Wow. It stood out to me. Now, again, I had no idea that I was going to do this. I really thought in my mind, in my heart, my thoughts was that I was going to be reviewing Revelation chapter 16, verse 1 through 7, because I had an amazing study and I finally get and understand what the river is. Like, that took me a long time to figure out too. It took me a couple of days. It took me a couple of days, but it took many, many hours of sitting and just asking questions and keep asking. Just like, I like how Jacob said to that angel, he's like, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. I need an answer here. And I was not turning this stuff loose until I actually began to understand it. And so I knew yesterday that I was going to do a video. I just didn't know I was going to do this video. And I had absolutely no idea. Like, I've read this many times before. And I never really paid attention to the north gate or the fact that this was on the north, and it's just ironic to me that at this time where, like, the next holiday that's coming up, I think it's next week, is Thanksgiving. Right? But yet this guy said yesterday, and I remember like so clear because I heard him and I didn't think nothing of it. I was doing whatever I was doing and it kind of came across my computer and I heard it and I just heard it and I just kept on going like, oh, whatever. Like, I'm not thinking of it. I was doing something totally different. And yet I was brought right back to that today where he said that it's not that we're not thankful, we know this holiday is coming up. It's not that. It's just that people are focusing more on Christmas because it's a time of joy, and so that's they want to kind of make it last longer. I think something to that effect. Like, it's on the internet, so I know, like, I probably won't hear it again because what I have found is that when I'm not paying attention to something, I'm going to see it over and over and over and over again until I pay attention to it. But the minute I pay attention to it, I'm not going to see it again. If I pay attention to it, I probably will copy it and post it like with this video and say, see, that's what I was talking about. That's what I heard. But, yeah, this is tripping me out. It's tripping me out because, again, it's going into more detail. I have already, last year, I did this study about the jealousy of Yahweh, and I realized it was the tree. Is this tree and the what? But yeah. But I did the videos on it, and I always say every year, I ain't got nothing to say. I don't, like, literally, it just don't be, I don't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to look up this information and then I'm going to get on everybody's nerves talking about this information. No, I don't do that. Like, I literally this morning had the thought of Revelation 16, 1 through 7. That's where I was. I was going to review it. And again, I'm not going to do that video now. Hopefully, I'll be allowed to do that video tomorrow, because that is so amazing when you're looking at the outpouring of these bowls. But those first 3 bowls, in the outpouring of these bowls, even though you're seeing God's wrath and his anger, what stands out the most when you begin to understand what these things represent, like what the river represents, and what, like, fresh water is fresh water, but the different types, like, man, I can't wait to share this. I literally can't wait to share this. And the revelation that I was given about the cross. Look, my writing get horrendous. But the revelation that I was given about that, all I could see is God's love for people, for humanity, for all of us, his love for us. And I can't wait to share that. But it's not going to happen today because I'm done right now. I had to get all this out and I had to share this. So I hope that this information blesses your personal studies. I hope that something was shared that would cause you to dig even more and study even more. And if you do, like, we're in the month of that. This is the month of Kids Lab, and it's all about leveling up. Leveling up in our areas of trusting in God, leveling up in our areas of resting in God, and learning new battle strategies. I'm going to be on top of this all month long. I'm excited. All right, y'all, I'm about to go. Now I feel like I could say thank you. Hi, Delphia. Hi, Teresa. Now I feel like I could say hello at the very end of it. I see you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me ramble on. So I'm done now. You guys have a blessed rest of your day. I'm about to close out now. Bye for now. Bye.